Well. Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave, and I got a massive shit-eating grin on my face right now because Bitcoin is bake. It's baking at 350 degrees Celsius, that is, of course, and we have plenty to talk about that is actually new. That is actually fucking new on Bitcoin for the first time in, well, about a month now. But but there's actually there's actually a lot of different interesting things across all markets right now, and Bitcoin finally showing its rearing its head, actually led by Mr. Buterin yesterday. Mr. Ethereum taking the lead, taking the charge. So I want to follow up on that analysis as well, following up on some traditional markets as well, but a big focus on perhaps Bitcoin today as deserved by taking out that short-term and medium-term pivot, respectively at I believe it was 9,300 and then 9,450-ish region, initiating a few slew of trades for myself, of which still running. So with that said, let's go check out let's go check out the Krown Trading application, which we found at app.krowntrading.net. And what do we see here? We do see that Bitcoin dominance has actually taken a nice leg down, which is suggestive that altcoins being the main beneficiaries of this current rally, which is rather interesting because usually when we do see Bitcoin rally, it's actually the altcoins that take it on the chin, but not necessarily in this segment right now. So we do have something new going on, and we actually will have to look into some of the altcoins going here because that is usually contrary to the general behavior of the crypto market. Looking at the rest of the metrics, we do see open interest more or less the same from yesterday, which is still of interest here, but I want to see what the read is on this when we actually break the high term time frame range, which is still the same, essentially 89.50 to the downside versus about 9,900 to the upside, of which we do see that the crypto fear and greed index actually taking up another 5 points from a 50 to a 55, so flirting with the greedy zone, so to speak. But overall, what's interesting here, and as we've been saying for like the last going all the way back to March, Bitcoin rallying up all the way from 4,000 to where we are right now, more than a 2x in price action, and we never really even saw this tick into or stay in the greedy zone, even with Bitcoin getting above 10,000. I believe maybe there was a day or two where it was technically in the greedy zone at around like a 60 ish, but for right now it is still, it does still present that case of maybe climbing the wall of worry, if you want to call it that. It's still very much relevant to the general discussion, but at the end of the day, price action matters first and foremost, and that is what we'll be discussing right here, right now. So let's go follow up on Mr. Buterin, which yesterday we did close that 3-day dildo, which was kind of the key in looking at this one right here, as we do have an impending golden cross on the 3-day between the 55 and the 200, of which we do see that this, what do you want to call this flag formation? Do you want to call it a cup and handle? Do you want to call it just a reaccumulation pattern? I would agree with that, and the result, more importantly, is to the upside. And I do believe that we have a little bit more of an extension on this current run before a nice short-term and maybe even medium-term sideways and down consolidation, likely up to about 275 region, 280-ish region, anywhere around this prior high right here. And then I'd probably be looking for a short and medium-term down, of which continuation after that will be the question. However, looking at major moving averages and looking at momentum as well, it would suggest that it is going to have a chance to actually break that long-term trend area. So that would be very significant from a multi-year trend perspective. And as we can see right here, the 3-day Stokes actually holding into the bullish control zone, which is very, 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 very good. And we do have a competing trend line right here, but that should be a damn good insight as to whether this rally is going to be efficacious or not, meaning that it's going to get follow through up to that next about $300 level, which will be had by any sort of a closure essentially above this trend line from a momentum perspective. As far as 3-day RSI goes, do we have any sort of divergences here to be aware of? No, not really. Could be creating some if we were to put in a high right here, but I don't think that that's what's happening. When looking at the major moving averages and looking at trend on top of it, on a higher term time frame like this, a 3-day is a higher term time frame, especially for crypto. I'd really be looking for a move into this blue box territory right here. So upper 200s around 280 to 290ish region, and that's going to be the next big potential area for a massive change of behavior on the macro, so to speak. So all of these things are lining up with each other, but more importantly, we're going to see historical volatility percentile very likely enter into, or at least have a chance to enter into, an expansion phase, which coming from this area right here would suggest that the new trend that is emerging is going to be the dominant trend for quite some time. But again, at the end of the day, and I always want to be very, 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 very like in your face with this sort of thing, price action matters most. And for myself, levels take precedence business over everything else. My opinion, I always like to say that my opinion is worthless. I do not trade my opinion, and I would be broke as fuck if I traded my opinion. And in this case right here, until we actually do see technically a long-term change of behavior with a 3-day or weekly close, or even a daily total closure of about, what is this area, about 290, then I wouldn't necessarily, consider the macro fully and formally change just yet. But if that were to happen, we would be bucking a trend that has been strong ever since late 2017, actually, which is massively significant. So, at that point, we could talk about targets back up to, 330, 350, 400, 420, great number. But overall, the direction and the bias would be, long-term up, of course. Now, going over to Bitcoin and seeing how this has followed through as well. Most importantly, we did take out that last little swing high that we saw on 7th of July that I was harping on for so long at 94.50ish region, and not just took it out, but also closed the daily with a nice thick green dildo above there as well. And it is alive, baby. It is fucking alive, at least for right now. So I do like this, I do like this current read because or Bitcoin, not we, as I'm not Bitcoin, and perhaps you are not either, but it's just an inanimate object. But looking at this right here, we do have higher low, 1, 2, and now we have a higher high. So the daily is once again reverting the trend. And more importantly, from a Trollinger Band perspective, we have a lot of interesting things going on right here. First and foremost, obviously we're above the median, but more importantly, yesterday we did close above the top Trollinger Band. And I would consider this in the process of trending on the daily, as long as we are closing daily totals, especially above the top Trollinger Band, which is coming in just a few hairs above 9,500-ish region. And realistically, my bias right now is short-term that Bitcoin will make a leg up to test around 9,700-ish region. Do we play off, a short-term down after that and consolidate, a little bit lower, maybe retesting around 9,500? Definitely possible, yes. But overall, I'd really be looking for that 3-day hidden bullish divergence that we were speaking about to now be initiated, as the trigger for that was met with taking out that 7th of July high, which very likely does initiate a move to the top side of our range, top side of the long-term range, I should say. This blue box right here that we've been looking at, right around about 9,900-ish region. Same thing for Mr. Buteral that I'd say, same thing for Bitcoin that I've been saying about Mr. Buteral. Yes, while this does look like a good setup overall, at the end of the day, until we actually get a break above this region, I don't consider it broken. And again, that's not trading my opinion, but rather trading technical analysis. Just like to the downside right here, I was talking about moves all the way down to low 8,000, mid 7,000, all the time that Bitcoin was scratching up the $9,000 region. But failure to break means that there was no trade initiated. And same thing for the top side right here. And I'll say this directly right now to the spoon boys out there: and it's gonna be like the opposite spoon boys. So over here is the Boulaw spoon boys, who are like very set back, or very upset that Krown was talking about big moves to the downside when Bitcoin was flirting with the downside resolution. I'm going to be doing the same thing to the upside right here. I'm giving you a fucking fair warning. I'm telling you right now, if the second that Bitcoin gets back around here, or even above 9,700, I will be talking about targets to 11,000 and 11,500 once again. But again, until the trigger is met, there's no trades to be made, and that is what trading is all about, at least in the way that I do it. And understand my sort of perspective as a trader, and where this analysis is coming from. I understand that some people out there, you probably have a different mindset as far as what time frames mean what the fuck is going on over here. There we go. Anyways, sorry, crazy things going on my other screen. It's prawns. Doggy prawns. Terrible joke to be making, sorry. Anyways, so my point is that yes, until we get that confirmation, it's still just an idea, but it would certainly set in the bias anywhere above 9,900, especially on a daily or even a 12-hour closure. I'd be looking for quick moves to the 10,400-ish region first, probably a short-term down after that, consolidate a little bit downwards. But any sort of a consolidation above 9,900, especially, is going to be interpreted as long-term bullish, with targets being initiated towards our weekly area, of which I haven't even plotted out for a while now, just because it hasn't been relevant for a while. But it would be plotted out somewhere right around here at about 11,000, and then 11,500, which 11,500 has a particular long-term significance to it. And the reason, let me go to a fresh chart actually, because this is just much more important. 11,500 does have a particular significance here, because that is the same area that Bitcoin's essentially been getting rejected from ever since January 2018. So that's, that would be breaking if Bitcoin were to get back above there, breaking a almost 3-year long now liquid zone that has essentially been institutional order flow. Essentially been presenting institutional order flow dynamics in play, as that is where the big boys been getting their fills for shorts. I mean, you can see all these wicks above this region, and then quickly price action moves away from it and putting in these massive, downs, retracements, 70% retracements afterwards. I say that is very, 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 very indicative of that. So that's the long-term not long-term, but macro pivot, as opposed to a long-term, where long-term I just kind of judge above about 9,900, which would start to set in the bias of just playing in that range, in the low 5 digits, if you want to call it that. But still, the macro, that would be my trigger for getting on the Bulaw train to we could talk about targets to 14,000, 16,000, 20,000, but generally just overall up. So let's go down now into the lower term timeframes, because I feel like I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself right now, and realistically the higher term timeframes, they're more or less unchanged. You can go back in the videos for the past 3 months, and those areas are the same. As far as the lower term timeframes go, we do have the 4-hour golden cross actually once again confirmed. It's been a little bit of a meme as of the last month. We did get a death cross right here. No real follow through in the way that you'd expect it from that. Did get a decent move of about, what was it, going all the way from 9,200 down to 8,800, $400 move. So that's a little bit over 4%. Is that tradable? Yes, but is that what you expect from a signal like that? No. And then snaking back around after a little bit of a head fake right here. Does that err the probabilities on the side of the upside? Yes, it does. And volume signature is also confirming that, as well as we do see increasing volume on the pumps right here, which I do think is rather significant, because we really haven't seen anything out of the ordinary for quite some time, and so that is of interest right now. Looking at momentum oscillators, we do see 4-hour Stokes obviously pointed north and painfully erect, it looks like. 4-hour RSI, no divergences to be found here. It looks rather healthy thus far, and while we do have a nice girthy close above that 94.50-ish pivot, it would not be out of the realm of possibility to get to test back down around 94.50. But just like I was looking at it as a pivot to the upside, initiating that move, which I still believe is in progress towards that 9,700-ish target and perhaps beyond, if the 3-day takes over to about 9,900, which very likely does. I'd be looking at that as the same sort of implications for the downside as well. So as long as Bitcoin's living above it, more or less fine, more or less good. But if Bitcoin does break back down below this region, that same region at about, let's just call it 9,400 to be a little bit more conservative, although more aggressive traders will look at it as 9,450. I'd be looking at that as a harbinger for another move back down into the bottom side liquid zone, where the long-term resolution can be had to the downside once again at about 9,000. So still, that is it's within the cards. Obviously, it's always a game of statistics and probabilities. Not a game of crystal balls. Although if you do have a crystal ball, I'd be more than happy to hear you out. However, looking at it right now, let me actually get rid of this area right here. It is relevant, but only to the short-term timeframes, of course. So I'd be looking at this as a nice medium-term pivot once again, with a bias to the upside, as long as we're above it, of course, as trend and momentum oscillators and actually even the Joule given a nice haltier long signal as well here. Now I do want to follow up on that 2-day signal that I was kind of looking at as a potential sell signal, a haltier short signal. That does not look like it's going to play out here. Obviously, I mean, if this is the current posturing of Bitcoin, looking at the 2-day Stokes, we are actually having a fake out right around the edge of the bearish control zone, which is rather good as well, and indicative that will at least test around the bullish control zone. So does set in that bias. And by the way, because we did close a 3-day dildo last night, which was a big focus of yesterday's video, I do want to follow up on this one as well. And guess what? We do see that the 3-day Stokes are going to cross back up to the upside, rejecting the bearish control zone, and more importantly, playing out this trend line as well at the same time. Or I guess I already have it in there. Nice little regression in there. And what do we have on 3-day RSI? We have confirmed above the exponential as well. Is there any sort of divergences here to be aware of? No, at least not present as it is. And this is also very interesting. And now I really want to start to combine a lot of different facets of TA here with some more sophisticated tools, perhaps, that I think is really going to help round out the long-term bias with this current move in progress. And we'll bring it all full circle in a second, but it needs to start off with this. Historical volatility percentile is at realistically record lows for this time frame. This is a 3-day time frame right here, and we've been looking at this on a daily. you know, 2-day, 3-day, and weekly, or sorry, not a weekly, but all the other time frames. And for more or less, we are at, you know, you could say historical lows. Is it the lowest time? Is it the lowest in all time? It depends what settings you use, of course. But you can certainly see that this is, you know, in the realm of major, massive moves likely being baked up. Now, let's go over here, and I want to show you this once again. So I presented this for the first time yesterday with regards to entropy, and this is a topic that a lot of people are probably familiar with from like thermodynamics or physics or something like that, you know, from the sciences, that actually does have some interesting play in TA, as it essentially can tell you when randomness and uncertainty are at their highest and lowest respectively. And with that, it will essentially identify when things are most likely to trend in line with historical volatility percentile. Those two need to be combined together. So how does that essentially look like? Well, let's just start it off right here. When entropy is falling and historical volatility percentile is expanding, that is actually the perfect signature for when you can get really strong trending moves. As you can see right here, entropy has been falling ever since 14th of July. And looking at historical volatility percentile, this is actually all-time HVP down here. We can see that this is contracted so much that, well, being a mean reverted indicator, it would be more than likely that this does, well, expand from this region, or at least that's the more likely thing. And if we go back to our other charts that we were just referencing, this one right here, I think it's a little bit more relevant on this. You know, I know that all-time HVP is going to be more, well, it's going to be more inclusive, of course, but it's always relative to each other in the way that, you know, in the way that those numbers, you know, work with each other. I mean, it's just the way that they're programmed. So looking at this right here, realistically, can we contract more? I mean, you can stay low for, you know, for a longer time, but what's more likely here, as Bollinger Bands once again start to insinuate that we do have a trend in progress, switching around to the upside. Daily trend has switched around to an uptrend as well. We see 3-day historical volatility percent, or sorry, not HVP, although that is of interest, but we do see that 3-day Stokes turning back up. We also see 3-day hidden bullish divergence, which I didn't actually call out on this current video, but have been speaking about for the last week and a half. And then now we also see entropy falling consistently, while historical volatility percentile is in a posture that would indicate that it's a lot more likely to expand rather than contract. We'll obviously look at probabilities a little bit later, but I'd say that that is a pretty good stance for if you are going to look for a new trend to emerge from this base. Okay, let's go back. We can actually even test this out a little bit as well. What I will show here is, here's a really good example. Or is it a good example? Yeah, here's a really good example from last year, actually. Okay, so we see that entropy was falling all the way from the end of March 2019. Well, what happened in the end of March 2019? That was the beginning of this massive rally from about 4,000 to 14,000. Well, what was historical volatility percentile doing during this time? It was actually rather low in the single digits at around 8.5 at its lowest right there, and then expanded the whole way through all the way up to 14,000. Of which the entropy fell the whole way through until we actually met our high. Or actually, no, it did get kind of high here as well, but then, it obviously emerged a new trend. So we have a relatively similar setup right here, as historical volatility percentile or all-time HVP is actually even a little bit lower than where we were between that current posturing, and entropy is falling at the same time. That would be suggestive that the more than likely we are going to see trend emerge to the upside here, which I do think is relevant. When you combine all these tools together, both momentum, volatility, and entropy, and trend, and Bollinger Bands, and all these different things, does make for good confluence. And confluence is the name of the game as far as I'm concerned when it comes to the macro, as far as judging biases. Now, for myself, I actually don't even really trade on the macro. So this is more or less mental masturbation for myself, but I know that a lot of people are interested in, in the long-term foreign asset like this. And so I think that that's more or less relevant more than ever right now, because we actually do have that read once again, as Bitcoin seems to be setting in the long-term trend. And with the 3-day, and let me just point this one out right here as well, with the 3-day hidden bullish divergence on RSI, it would suggest that we do have a move at the very least to 9,700, but probably, like I've been saying, to the top side of the range at 99 to 10,000, which again is going to put it in a good posturing for it to actually have a potential to break out above that region, which, by the way, that's the same region that And I fucking hate diagonal trend lines, but like I guess I made this on the, where is that trend line coming from? That looks wrong to me. I really dislike using wicks, and I really dislike using diagonals. So I'm breaking like two of my rules all at the same time. I don't know where this one's coming from. I must have just been playing around or something. I don't even, when the fuck did I even put that one in? Anyways, okay, cool. What else do we want to talk about while we're here? Weekly as well. So the weekly is also starting to switch around into more of a bullish posturing as well. I do want to see Friday's closure specifically for CMEs, and I want to see if it closes, especially above what we printed on 6th of July wick high. If we can close above that area, that'd look very, very good. Any sort of a closure above the 10 simple right here at 93.50 also, looks good as well. And that very likely does force weekly Stokes back up. And massive thanks to Bali for once again I fucked. He gives me all these great tools, and then I just fuck it up by being like, am I selecting the right one or not? Well, look, yesterday the reason why I didn't have access, I was selecting the wrong one. But what's of interest here is that we do see that weekly RSI is going to be bouncing off the exponential in the neutral zone. There's not really much to be made off of that, but when you combine it with weekly Stokes, which are coming down and starting to loosen their grips while also looking at the 3-day hidden bullish divergence all coming into play, well, where do weekly Stokes turn back up to the upside? Above 10,000. This is, by the way, for CMEs. For spot price action, it would be 9,900. So, that same sort of liquid zone to the top area. If Bitcoin does get back above there, and especially close this weekly above there, well, now we have momentum turning back up to the upside as we break the long-term range, as all the other things that we spoke about are in place. And realistically, I would be looking at this as, let me get rid of this. Let me actually go to a fresh chart as well. Maybe it's time for me to delete my my GDAX chart. But what would be the interpretation of this as far as a pattern goes? Not that I'm like the biggest pattern trader of all time, but it is, I suppose that this is still very much relevant here as an ascending triangle. We do have higher lows all the way through, and a little bit of a sloppy kind of approach right here, but you can still make the argument for it, yes. And there would be a measured move to be made on this. I'll do like a very bad one right here, but what do you know? It does point up north towards that liquid zone that I was speaking about the long-term zone at about 11,000 to 11,500-ish region, of which that's where the macro can get massively interesting. So I'd really look for Mr. Budall to kind of set the tone here, just because it did make the first move up, and it was sort of the canary in the coal mine as of the last week or two with the 3-day, especially that it was setting in higher lows right here alongside an impending golden cross, while also breaking yesterday officially the last horizontal coming in from the 250 region. So I do like all those things lining up with each other. I do believe that this one makes another leg up towards a more long-term zone right here. Now, how does this fit into the world markets? Because we do see that Bitcoin and cryptos in general typically follow traditional markets as far as the major indices goes. Well, it would appear that NASDAQ yesterday, which I do believe is still leading the market, is it still, do I still think that it's topped out here? I mean, what sort of bias would I have with a closure like we had yesterday? Well, overall, it does look like very short term we are going to pop back up, probably back up towards the 10,900 to 10,950-ish region. But does that make me bullish overall? No, I actually do think that we still come back down to test around the daily 21. Wherever that one lands at the time at about 10,500 to 10,550-ish region. I do believe yesterday I said I would be looking for a short-term target to the downside at 10,700. We didn't necessarily get there. We got down to about 10,760. So I wouldn't say that one was close enough. That one was a little bit off. But was my target really 10.7? It was more like 10.720. A little bit closer. But overall, short-term, I actually do think that this one pops back up. Into today's open for Thursday, New York Stock Exchange at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, but I do think that the open is probably very likely going to be a sell, and Tesla is going to be a very interesting proposition right here, as I'm sure that a lot of people are very happy about the way that the aftermarket hours traded, but that I would be very, 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 very skeptical of. Anyways, short term right here, yes, does probably pop back up. Although looking at, wow, my voice just cracked there. Sound like a little bitch. Fucking goddamn it, man. Anyways, looking at the hourly momentum also, it's kind of snaking around quite a bit there. Difficult read. However, overall, I do think that I do think that the next medium term move is to the downside, like I've been saying, at about 10.550-ish region, and then I'd be looking for a bounce there, and then we'll come back to it after that happens. By the same token, I would have to get bullish again if we do close any sort of a daily above 10,950. If that does happen, can't argue with trend. Do I think that that's going to happen? Probably not. No, but if that did happen, that would revert my bias, my good old bias boner from looking for a short term down here and then a consolidation sideways, and then we'll look for the resolution after that. I think that we're gonna spend a little bit of time in this region between 10.5 and 10.9.5 region. So to kind of wrap up my thoughts on this one, yes, short term back up, probably around open as well, but I'd be looking for that to actually be a sell, very, very likely. The only way that I get bullish on this, once again, looking for new all-time highs, is with a daily total closure above 10,950. If that were to happen, then I don't really have like a target to the upside. I'd just be looking for a trend to continue once again. Trend to continue once again, as it would really set the weekly up for a very nice closure. And what's your targets after that? It's very difficult to come up with targets when you are in a blue sky breakout. Of course, you can use like fib extensions and everything, but we've kind of hit all of those as far as I'm concerned. This was one that we had in going all the way back to wherever this area was right here. Yeah, late March, which is where I got started to get very, very bullish on traditional markets. Looking at this as not the fucking Great Depression that everyone's talking about, but more or less a complete and utter melt to the upside, of which we hit the 1.414 fib retracement here, fib extension here. But I still do think that this more than likely turns into at the very least a medium term top, and I would be quite confident in calling this a long-term top with a daily closure anywhere below about 10,550, 10,500 especially, but 10,550 probably gets it done. With resolution probably coming in the next couple weeks. So that's what I'd be looking at right there. Let's go check out E-mini futures for SPY as well. Very good closure yesterday, and continuation is the name of the game. As we've been saying, ever since we got that closure above 323, targets initiated all the way up to 333 region, and I don't really have anything to add there. So I do believe here's what I actually think that we're seeing in traditional markets right now. I believe that we're seeing rotations, as I've been saying for the last few weeks. NASDAQ went first, techs are leading the market. Now it's time for the for the next probably the health sector is what's going to get rotated up. But SPY going to follow up next with that as far as the major bourses go, and then I'll be looking for I don't know what would be after that, but they're all going to take turns kind of putting in their rallies, and we'll judge their relative strength by how far they get, and then essentially analyze it once NASDAQ makes its next move outside of that range that we just spoke about, 10,950 to the upside and 10,550 to the downside. Whichever way that it breaks will set the bias in for the rest of the market, very, 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 very likely. Tesla, Microsoft, all having earnings this week, and let's see how they're reacting right now. So I do believe that Microsoft post-market did trade down to about 208, and I do believe that yesterday I said that I'd be looking for Microsoft to come back down and test around. Yesterday I said that Microsoft was going to test around 209 region and probably bounce from there, and I do believe that, I believe that that's what we saw. I do believe that today is probably going to open, probably around yesterday's close. However, I'd be looking for that to actually be a sell here and probably come back down to the 205 region, of which it's the same thing as the NASDAQ in a sense that would I necessarily get long-term bearish off that? No. Do I think that we're potentially putting a long-term high here? Yes, but is that confirmed as of right now? No, not at all. Not until we at the very least do one of two things: either tick below 13th of July's low at 201.39, or close a daily dildo below about 203 region, and then I'd be looking for retracements back down into the low 190s, upper 180s, and then we'll come back after that. But for right now, I'd still be looking for this to go into like a medium-term consolidation, try to put in a base at about 204, 205 region. Probably does put in another bounce off that region, and then we'll see where the bounce lands us. If the bounce results in a closure back above 214.5 or even above 213.5, I would look for this to continue the uptrend. and make new all-time highs, and the same thing here. I don't really have targets for it anymore, or except we could actually make some off this, because if this is going to continue the upside, it probably spends some time going sideways here and puts in some sort of formation which will have some sort of a measure move. If I had to guess, it would be some sort of a reaccumulation formation with a target into like into the mid 220s, if I had to guess right now. But it's obviously going to take some time before there's anything like tangible as a trader to be working off of here. But the range, I do believe, is rather set between about 214 to the upside and 203 to the downside as far as daily closures go. Looking at Tesla as well, Tesla actually post-market, Tesla did trade up quite a bit to, I think, 1690 region to make a little bit of did it make a higher high? Yes, it did make a higher high right here, but I still stick with what I've been saying on Tesla. That very likely is going to be a sell, at least for the open today. I would be looking for that one to come back down a little bit, regardless of whether you're bullish or bearish. I mean, it's a classic trade here. The question is, what is the next closure after today? And that is, the next closure outside of the medium-term range today, which would be had and confirmed with really driving the downside bias anywhere below 1500. And likewise to the upside, if we do get a closure, especially above 1650, do have to be bullish based off that. Once again, I will be wrong about this one putting in a very long-term, maybe even macro top here if we do get a daily closure above 1650. So that's kind of my line in the sand as far as this one goes. But as long as we're closing dailies below it, I do think that we're going to play out some more sideways here and down, and this one will come all the way back down to the 1200 region, fill the gap on the weekly, and probably bounce there, and then we'll come back to it after that. But for right now, the weekly still kind of set in place. I would say that this is that if this one opens up anywhere above 1600, I'd actually be looking for that to be a nice and a nice sell into the early morning hours, and then come back to it after that with particular interest on the high term time frame range. That would change my buy. So I want to be very specific in stating that 1650 is that area. If it does have a daily closure above there, at least I cannot be bearish off that. Long term, I'd probably be looking for a retest of 1800 and maybe beyond. We'll come back to it after that. However, so yeah. Anyways, what else do we want to check out while we're here? Maybe some Apple. Apple looking a lot more toppy than the other two. Short term does look like it wants to maybe pop back up towards 392 region. I'm sure that people are going to call this an ascending triangle, and you can definitely make the case for it, and I would agree with it. But resolution is not had until we get back above 397-ish region on at the very least an hourly closing basis, and preferably a daily. But above 397, I would have to be bullish for a move very likely towards 405, 410 region. However, looking at the daily right here, it looks a lot more toppy to me. We do have bearish divergence in place as well, and I do believe that this one is a lot more likely to head back down to about 275, 276 region, and test around the 21, of which I'd be looking for a bounce on. Should also be noted that Daily Jewel did give a decent sell signal here. It could, if it was a little bit softer, it'd be like super perfect, but that one's pretty damn good in and of itself. And I happen to think that one likely does play out. What else do we want to look at? Euro dollar, big one as well that we've been following. And I do believe that I said medium term targets to 115.5 were had into this week. I think we've already met that. Yeah, we haven't just met that. We've exceeded that. I'd be looking for long-term extension to 118 region, 17, like the upper 117s to 118 region now, and then probably a medium-term consolidation plus some down after that, and then we'll come back to it. And then also the where is it? Yeah, there it is. Dixie, the dollar index. I want to put this one on a monthly and explain this one as well. We did get resolution on the weekly last week to the downside, which is very likely going to initiate a long-term move all the way down to the 200 exponential moving average. I do believe, actually. This is also coming along the side of, I believe, a weekly jewel sell signal somewhere right around here. And that did catch the 100.5 dollar high right here. Didn't get the ultimate high, so a little bit disappointing right there, but overall fine, especially on a long-term move like this. But very long-term, I want to be very clear in stating this. I'm actually extremely bullish on the U.S. dollar, like long-term, like 5-10 years out. But over the next few months and maybe even like a year or two, I'd be looking for this one to come down quite a bit here, probably all the way down to the 200 exponential moving average there, which is 91.4, 91.5 region. And if that fails, then we'll get to that one if that does happen. I don't want to get too ahead of myself right now, because I also want to be very I want to be as balanced as possible with this sort of analysis, because I feel like some people will interpret that bearishness on US dollar as like not what I intend for. Long term, this actually looks like it's under very long term accumulation, but short and medium term, yes, this one is very likely coming down. What else do we want to check out? Do we want to check out some shitcoins today? Are we done looking at actual trading assets? What about triple Qs? What's triple Qs doing? Looking good coming into the end of the month. But same thing here as well. Upside resolution above 268, downside resolution below 256. Do you think that the next move probably does pop back up to test around 267-ish region? But I don't think that we're looking at continuation here. I think that we're looking at another stab up plus a rejection, and then move back down to the low side of the range at like 260-ish region. What else do we have? Do we want to look at some Forexes? Yeah, Forex is good. Aussie dollar. What's Aussie dollar doing? Looking like short term up. Looking like dailies up. Looking like golden cross has happened. Looking like weekly is setting up for a test of the 200 simple and 200 exponential moving average a little bit higher at 72.5 cents, and then probably a little bit of down after that. Not the best chart long term. In fact, a very nasty chart long term, but at least short term bullish. Long term not bullish. Jesus Christ, man. What about yen versus dollar? This one is in a long-term consolidation here as well. It's interesting. These are kind of thought as like the two reserve currencies of the world right now. And what do we have here? We basically have one massive symmetrical triangle coming out of this formation right here. So the next resolution of it, very likely anywhere above, what is this, 0.9996. That would massively favor the yen versus the dollar, probably all the way back up to what we saw in August 2013 at 0.01, a little bit above there. By the same token, to the downside, I'd be looking for downside resolution below 0.897. I'd be looking for moves back down to June 2015 lows at 0.0 basically 8. So still kind of baking in that one right here, but kind of a weird, bizarre chart to be analyzing. Strange. I wonder what that means for the world. But if I did have to call it right here, it does look like the yen's going to get the next try to the upside. Okay. What about Swiss franc versus dollar? Bullish. Do believe that we were covering this one as of a few weeks ago. I mean, this trigger was had right here. It's been bullish ever since. I don't really have too much to add on to that. Is approaching long-term resistance right here, but it doesn't look like that's going to stop it really. At least like a short-term sell-off, maybe, yes, maybe a medium-term sell-off, but I do think that it is going to hit this target at 109 region. What else do we have? Have I been speaking for long enough? Holy shit, man! It's been 37 minutes already. What the fuck? I guess we can go take a look at Cardano. So a lot of the alts probably were rallying versus Satoshis yesterday, but it looks like Mr. Cardano more or less flat and steady. I don't really have anything to add here. Yeah, I don't have anything to add here. We do have potential hidden bullish divergence in play, which should get things back up to 1385. Although I still seem to favor a move back down to 1150. I'd much rather see the weekly close on this one. I don't think I have a good read on this one right now. It's either a potential major macro high being put in right here, which would be accompanied by major macro hidden bearish divergence on the weekly, which very likely initiates a move back down below 1,000 satoshis. By the same token, if this weekly does close above, especially 1350. Is it going to get another try to the upside? Yeah, probably. So I'd much rather wait for that. I don't think it's appropriate to call it right here. Link bouncing from the area that we spoke about yesterday at 74,000 satoshis. I would still kind of maintain my short-term target of 85 500-ish region, and then come back to it after that. I don't really have a long-term bias on this one just yet. I mean, obviously a chart like this is going to be long-term bullishly biased, of course, but for right now, For right now, it's kind of the same thing as Cardano. I want to see the weekly closure, but short term, yes, up. What else do we want to look at? I think gold. Yeah, let's talk about gold for a second. Gold has basically hit into our long-term blue box target. We've been bullish on gold ever since 1400, like months and months ago, which was right around here. Yeah, it looks like late May, and in that long-term target getting hit. Nice. Fair enough. I'd probably be looking for another spike into like the backside of this blue box, which is a little bit higher at 1884. Or did we get up there? 1876. Yeah, pretty fucking close right there. I would say that that's likely going to result in a short-term consolidation sideways and down. Probably does come back down and test around the low 1800s, but long-term still looks good. Monthly, depending upon how we close this one, I'd be looking for maybe new all-time highs. If this one especially closes above, basically here or higher, or anywhere above 1850, or really even anywhere above 1820, which I would look for to get retested coming into next month. But I'd be looking for new all-time highs after that. It's not bearish. That's looking very, very good. This is not even on log scale, by the way. This is on linear, so quite impressive indeed. And this is coming from someone who's like not really a fan of gold, but I have been bullish on gold for a long time. It's just a good chart at the end of the day. So let's go back to Bitcoin and let's start to wrap up. Let's look at probabilities actually. Okay, alrighty. So using now the same 9450 pivot as a bias, once again turning back onto a medium term move to the downside, likely netting Bitcoin back down in the $9,000 region, like low 9,000, not $9,000 liquid zone right here. I would feel comfortable using that as a short term, medium term, and even I shouldn't say long term. Long term is still this area right here, but short term and medium term bias to the upside with a short term target of 9,700, and very likely the 3-day does reach its potential at 9,900 to 10,000-ish region, which can set it up for a long term breakout here. So the areas that I'll use is I'll use 9450 or let's actually use 9400, just give it a little more breathing room. And then to the upside, we'll use, we can look at the long-term range, but I'd also like to look at 9700 as well. But 9700 is only relative to a short-term move, and realistically, with the way that the 3-day looks, I actually don't think that it's going to mean all that much. Or at least, if it does happen, in the way that it can happen, it's probably going to be relatively quick. So I'd much rather look at 9900 because that's a lot more relevant to the long-term situation. And it'll give us a better idea of what the potential is from this current price point. And what do you know? The upside target probability for the long-term move is about 18.5% versus the below target probability for a medium-term move to the low side of the $9,000 range at 37.4%. So obviously the low, the downside resolution is more probable here. But look at the rings on this. They started to turn yesterday as momentum was turning up as well, and Bitcoin, well, takes the path to the upside. However, let's also do this with a 9700 even. To the upside, and see how that kind of relates to each other. And here you can see when we kind of relate both timeframes that have equal meaning to them. I'd say a medium term move below 9400 and a short term medium term above 9700. Now the probabilities are more or less the same, 34% versus 37 and about 0.5%. It technically does favor the downside, yes, a little bit, but both of these are relatively high probabilities to begin with. Now I want to do something else that I haven't been talking about at all recently, and we can look at this right here. So this is the probability cone, which essentially forecasts probabilities looking, out into the future, of which we can look 7 days out. So a week from now, we can look at the probabilities of that. And the probability of getting above 11,500 in the next week is actually 34%, which is pretty fucking high. By the same token, and a little bit more of a sombering tone, the 1 week out from today, probability of getting below 7750 is 37.4. So that is still very much relevant. And the inside probability, basically playing out the whole $3,000 range between them, $3,500 range between them, is 28.5%. So it is, it is of interest here. But because we are looking further out, this is. It's definitely going to be helpful for options traders. Like I find this massively useful, but I imagine for like the average everyday investor Not all that helpful just because these ranges are massively humongous. But it does play in quite nicely to the long-term range for Bitcoin that we've been speaking about as well. So even when I was speaking about potential major downside moves into the upper $7,000 territory for Bitcoin, remember the long-term was always going to be an opportunity around there. It just looks like we're not going to get that opportunity. This is a bi-monthly chart, which you can see very easily that if we even, well, I guess you can't really have it on linear scale if we're going to actually analyze this, but long-term, obviously, the bi-monthly is bullish here. All major moving averages are bullish. We do see that Bitcoin essentially seems to be putting in a nice accumulation base at the low 7,000s. Just looks like we're a lot less likely to get that downside resolution, which would give us another test into that liquid zone, into that region. So at the end of the day, that is of interest. Can it still happen? Yes, as long as long as Bitcoin hasn't broken above 9,900 to 10,000, especially on a 12-hour or daily total closure. That is relevant. Oh, also forgot to do a more thorough look on the lower term timeframes, but let's go back down here and let's look at our momentum oscillators. So daily Stokes. Let me actually put this. Hey. Where are you? There you are. Okay, cool. Daily momentum will remain to the upside as long as we're above 92.35, which is very interesting here because that's obviously very forgiving of that last little swing high that we saw at 9,400-ish region. On a 12-hour, what do we see here as well? We do see that on a 12-hour, we will maintain momentum to the upside as long as Bitcoin is closing above 9,300-ish region. Again, same sort of implications with that. That's actually massively below a pretty big buffer zone, below that $9,400 pivot. And we don't really have any divergences to be spoken of. Now, I'm sure someone might point out that 22nd of June would have some, yes, but that's so far away, and using a 14 period, is it relevant? Yes, but we're still in the process of trending here, so not until we even confirm a local high, which on the 12-hour it looks like we're still trending right now. So no, it's not in the process of happening right now. What about the 10-hour? What's the 10-hour doing? Always do want to keep an eye on this one. This one actually does show 94.50. So yes, that is going to be a pretty damn good pivot here. And seeing as we are in the TA Autis zone of the video, I do think that the 10-hour actually has taken over for the 12-hour as of the last couple months. Hasn't been too consistent the last couple months because nothing has really been that consistent. Although it has gotten all the swing highs and swing lows, just a little bit of snaky behavior out there. It's just been more consistent than the 12-hour in the last couple of months, I'd say, and I'd look for that to potentially emerge onwards and forwards. And if you've been paying attention to these videos for the last couple of years, you might have noticed that the 3-hour was a big focus of like 2018. Then it was the 12-hour that was mostly 2019, and now I believe it's kind of switching into the 10-hour. So this is just the different interplays between the different market operators kind of taking over. And sometimes you find something that works, and as my mentor always said, it works until it doesn't. So abuse it until it stops working. And this is not financial advice, and I'm not a financial advisor, but that is something that I've learned the hard way to trust in. Anyways, 4-hour momentum remains to the upside as long as we're above 9,400. I do think that's interesting as well. No divergences to be found here as we do get the bullish cross. And 3-hour, same thing, 94.50. 2-hour, same thing, 94.40. Hourly, not the same thing, 95.30 for momentum to remain back up to the upside. So very short term, probably a little bit of sideways, but overall, I do think that using 94.50-ish region as a pivot, bias boner is angled to the upside, probably somewhere around 9,700 short term. Now, if 94.50 does get broken to the downside, especially on a 2-hour or 4-hour delta closure, I would look for another return back down very quickly to about 92.50-ish region. Probably small bounce there with likely continuation down to 9,000-ish region. And I think that is going to do it for now. I'd like to wish you the best of the best once again. I'm going to be signing off, and until next time.